to chronicle how we as musicians and artists live, and it gives you a window into our lives of how we do things and how we're treated and how we process our lives and our careers, and how you can be a part of that and understand what we do a little bit more. Today we have the lovely and talented Miss Cheryl Reese with us. She's going to introduce herself with what I'd like to start with, which is my kind of like my mantra. It's really a thing about life, and it boils down to who are you and what do you want? So if you could give us some sort, and what do you want could be, you know, what do you want for your life? What do you want for your children? What do you want for your career? It can mean a lot of different things for you, but tell us who you are and what do you want?
Well, that's kind of like a loaded question.
It is.
So
with cheese and chili and all the fixings that you want to put on there. So
I am Cheryl Reese, and I am the CEO of Brain Trust Management, and I basically am a business manager for musicians or artists of all kinds, pretty much. And what I want is for artists to freely be able to be creative and express themselves without worrying about the paperwork. Pretty much.
So basically what we want to do anyway from the gate.
From the beginning,
we don't
that's
want to
it.
be a part of the music business. And unfortunately, it's kind of become the music business instead of just us being able to do what we want to do as artists.
But I offer a different perspective in that I am not trying to take the money from you and not negotiate with you and make you aware of everything that is happening in terms of the music buyer or the venue. I'm keeping you in the loop the entire time.
So it's not just you handle this and we give you a portion of what happens. It's we're basically co-captaining what we're doing in terms of the direction the artist is going in.
Well, I pretty much ask the artist, you know, what do you want to do? How do you see yourself in this industry, and what impact do you want to make? So pretty much I am delivering an experience for you. So I'm helping you through this experience by you don't have to worry about, say for instance, the cost, negotiating, any of that kind of stuff. But I'm very open with it in terms of, you know, okay, this is what the venue wants to pay. Okay, now if you're gonna have a residency here, then that's something that you gotta build in terms of the audience, and especially if you want more money from the venue, you definitely have to bring in a good, if it's a small venue that has like a supper club or something, like the Bedford. Okay, how the Bedford was. Okay, you certainly have to fill that vault. And people should be buying food, people should be buying drinks. And as the manager watching this while the artist is performing, and say for instance, you just give it about 3 months. Say you fill that room.
So you put that into the contract, like I have this amount of time to make sure that we fulfill this quota.
No, I tell them that we are gonna do that.
Oh, okay. Oh, you tell them. See, that's
so in 3 months you'll see this. Because I believe in the artist, and I know the work that we're gonna do to make sure we fill that room.
Yeah, because I know a lot of proprietors want to see their return on their investment almost immediately. And that's one of the things that we as artists is like, well, people have to know, and they have to acclimate their lives to, oh, they're going to be there every second Sunday of the month or every whatever. And a lot of people don't understand, especially when they get into having live music, that it's going to take time for that to happen. So the fact that you institute that into, the program is hip.
Yeah, marketing, social media, flyers, and you have to be willing to do the footwork.
Are you responsible for that stuff, for the flyers and the amount of people that show up, or is that something that the artist also takes on?
Well, I pretty much do that. I do that. And with the venue, like the Bedford, they did provide like the flyers. I provided the picture and what I wanted the flyers to say. And then I would go around to the different like record shops in the city, stores, and put the flyers up. Do a MailChimp. I would send out an email, so you get it 2 weeks before, 2 days before, and 2 hours before the event. So it's almost like you have to inundate your audience with the information. So if it's constantly in your face, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to this tonight.
Like Inception in a way.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like you will come to the shows. What have you encountered? I know you've done this for a while and had a vast array of different artists. What made you become interested in being a liaison, as it were, to musicians and whatever venue or propriety that wants to have live music? What made you get into that?
Basically, I was introduced to it from 2 artists actually, Kahil El-Zabar and Avery R. Young. They both asked me because they knew I did managing, but I told them it was on a retail level opposed to music. And then I had some friends that's in the music business that I was able to kind of leverage to get, to make that transition. And I just went on from there. I did a lot of research, and I just seemed to be a person that gets along with people pretty well and able to negotiate pretty good. So.
Oh yeah, you're definitely about your business. Is there a correlation between retail and what you do dealing with musicians? Is there a difference, or is there one easier than the other?
Both industries they're selling. So whereas I'm selling clothing, shoes, accessories, this time I'm selling the person's creativity. I'm selling their art. I'm selling the experience you'll get from having this performer in your venue. So I'm selling an experience, definitely an experience.
Is that easier or harder than selling?
It's easy.
It's easier than selling a product. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one thing, it's the same product in retail. You selling probably maybe 5 or 6 different departments. So you selling shoes, ties, coats, shirts, slacks, socks, suits. So there's a conversation for each one of those, especially when you have to sell them in increments.
So there's, with artists, we change up so much sometimes, and we change our sound and what we do. Do you adapt what you do to their change, or do you basically say, hey, this is the same artist, they've just got something new for you? Or how do you kind of evade that, if it's something that the seller has come to expect from the artist and you're trying to sell them something different, how do you approach that?
For one, I tell them they're multidisciplinary. And then it was like, oh, well, what's that? So it's like, oh, what's that? So basically, for the artists that I have and have had, they've been able to tailor their sound to the venue. And so most of that is pretty much almost in the same thread of what they're doing anyway. So, for instance, Avery's a poet, Avery's a writer, Avery's a singer, and he does theatrics. So he does theater as well.
Yes, he does.
So,
shout out to Avery R. Young.
Shout out to Avery R. Young. So Avery's able to adapt to a lot of different environments and make it work.
Actually, that was the first time. It was the first time I saw Avery was at the Bedford Live. I met Avery at a church years ago at not a civil rights. It was like a rally for peace somewhere on the church on the south side, and he was walking up and down the aisle, catching the Holy Ghost. And I was like, who is this bug singing? And it was Avery. And then somehow, years later, I think I saw him at the Bedford. I actually taped a little bit of that on my
I remember.
Yeah, that was a fun time. I appreciate.
Yeah, we
you
had a 2-year
facilitating that.
residency there.
Yeah, you said how long?
2 years.
Yeah, y'all were there for 2 years. I know I had seen it for a while.
2-year residency. So on Avery's night at the Bedford, which was the last Wednesdays of every month, I'm pretty sure out of that small vault, they had the clock between 2,000 and 3,500 a night.
The
And
venue
that's in food and drinks. Yes.
Is and they didn't have a cover for the Bedford for that.
No.
So that was, you made that part of the deal, even though they weren't taking money at the door.
No, they didn't take money at the door, and they really didn't have a lot of people coming into the vault. They were trying to actually enliven that space. And the musicians that they actually had in there prior to Avery coming in were not bringing in the crowd like that. So if you think of a Wednesday night and people are having dinner or what have you, they're not, they're kind of eating and leaving. But if you look at it like this, it's kind of psychological. Avery was there from like 7 to like 11. So realistically, you could come out, have dinner, see a live show, and be back home by 10, even if you just saw his first set. So a lot of times during the week, a person will look at, oh wow, I had a really nice time out. We saw a show, we had dinner, and I was back home at 10. I could still get up and go to work the next day.
Okay. So it's being able to, so one of the things that we as artists do is be able to adapt to that. Is that something that you tell the artists, is that we're trying to create an experience? Maybe do you suggest things to the artist that may make the experience go a little bit smoother, or is that something that comes in arbitrarily, or?
Well, no, we discussed it, so I did make mention of that, so he understood it right away.
Okay.
He understood it right
He was
away.
able to alter his, that's interesting.
So if you stayed for the second set was more in depth, and it got a little bit more adulterated.
That was more of the show. The first part was like dinner theater, and then the second part was
no, he kind of, he played, I would say he did both, but the second part was like, say, when the artist does a show, but he does a little bit more freestyle. You get a little more fusion. You get a little more of everything then.
Okay. What have you come into any, and I don't want to say, well, have you come into any racism or sexism as a black woman in your field?
Basically, I did in the latter part of the Bedford, but I've worked with men all my life, pretty much, and in the retail field, this was real dominant. It was a men's store, big and tall men's store. So I was constantly dealing with high-end clients, primarily men, the whole time. So I was already accustomed to dealing with them and knowing what to do.
How do you deal with that with dignity? Because the first thing, especially as black people, I mean, I know I grew up in the hood and I also grew up in the suburbs, so I was able to tame, essentially, as it were, the experience that, the anger sometimes we feel that comes across as incompetence that we, often is exerted toward us. How do you deal with that without losing your cool?
Well, first of all, I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the Harold Ickes projects till I was about 10 years old, and then we moved a little further south. But first and foremost, I never look at myself in a negative way. And I told a friend the other day, I said, probably the worst thing that could have happened to me for other people was that I got saved when I was like younger. and I always felt like I had somebody with me all the time anyway. So that just only accentuated it.
Okay.
So I don't tell myself no, in spite of whatever or however the person approaches me. I don't tell myself this may not happen. I always say I'm gonna try. Let them tell me no. I'm not gonna tell myself no. And it's always more than one way to skin a cat. That's how I look at it. So if I come this way and it doesn't work, go around to the left or go around to the right or just step over you. But I'ma definitely get it done.
That's a hip ideology to have. I don't tell myself no.
I never tell myself no.
Yeah. I mean, some people, and that's the thing that people battle between is being a realist and a pessimist and an optimist. Is, you know, I view myself as a realist, so sometimes I'm like, no, that's not going to happen because based on this, and this. I'm very seldom an optimist where I can be like, yeah, I'm not going to tell myself no. It can or cannot happen, and whatever, I'm gonna try anyway. Sometimes I just don't feel like. For me, that's, you know, I don't know. I just have a feeling of. I don't know if it's self-defeatist to include that, but I think I would like to think that it's a totalitarian view of how life is and how life can be.
Well, you pretty much teach people how to treat you. So my ideology is this: when you can control a situation, control it. If you don't, when a situation controls you, you have no other choice but to bend to its will, and I am not doing that. I learned that very early on in life.
That sounds like the Matrix. That's what that sounds like.
No, when you can control something, control it. But if you procrastinate and the situation now has the upper hand, what are you going to do? Now you got to scramble. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to scramble. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
You generally don't put yourself in situations where you have to scramble. You usually do what you have to do in order not to have to scramble.
Well, I pretty much try to assess the situation first. I do a lot of listening. That's the most powerful thing you could do in this world is listen. I do a lot of listening. I watch people. I watch the body language. I watch how people are moving in a space. And then I pretty much assess where I need to jump in and where I can like move within this space with these people and still get what I need to get done.
Do you mentor and do you see any other younger black women doing what you do? And if you do, what advice do you have to give them if they're going to get into this? Well,
you know what? I got a lot of female friends who are artists, not necessarily musicians, but that are very strong women. And I try to always surround myself with people who are smarter than me or who have different ideas and approaches to things.
Okay.
So we all kind of learn from each other. You know what I mean? We bounce ideas off of each other. And no one is wearing their feelings on their collar, so to speak. So if someone speaks to you in a way, it's not like, oh, bitch, what you talking about? No, it's not that, okay? It's, we just, you know, we real. We keeping it 100. So, no, I have some really great female friends that are artists that are really strong women, and men too. Two of my brothers are really strong men, and we talk all the time. So I get a lot of that from them too.
Okay. What is one thing that you're working on right now that you want to change? If it applies to the industry, it may just be something personal. But is there something personally that you're working towards right now, in any necessary capacity? It doesn't have to necessarily be.
Well, I like the entertainment industry, and I would like more clients. And a little bit more, I don't know, let me see, definitely more clients. And I like to go further with them. So if it's a new client and they're new to the music scene. So what I did not tell you was with Avery, let's see, I got the album copywritten with the Library of Congress. Avery gets like double royalties. I signed him up with ASCAP.
Double royalties, I ain't heard that. Yeah, that's him. I ain't heard of double royalties.
Well,
we need to be talking.
That's something else. We'll have to go into that
we'll
another
talk
time.
about that. I got an album coming out. We need to talk about the double royalties.
Yeah, so you know, he's on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, all of those. It kind of comes as a package, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would like to do that more for other artists.
Okay.
You know, to let them know you can own your own. Okay.
It's amazing that people still don't know that. I mean, Ray Charles was doing that back in the 50s and 60s, and people still don't know they can own their own.
Well, we're living in a time where a lot of people want instant gratification. They want it right now.
Absolutely.
So if you're working with someone that's not very honest with you and they see that you're a little anxious, you're not really paying attention, some people take advantage of that, opposed to saying, hey, wait a minute, let me show you this. This is how you can have everything yourself. You can own all of this. This is yours. I don't understand a person will take the time to write the music, listen to sounds, figure out how they want it arranged, employ musicians to create this sound, and then give it away. That's a lot of work to give it away. And I've watched this process, and that's why I was like, no, you gotta own your own. Anybody that I work with that does any kind of music, you're gonna own your own.
Why do you think that's not a priority then? I mean, I know for us, making the art is most important. And yeah, getting paid is, of course, is part of it.
Sure.
But that's generally, initially, not why we got into it, is to get paid. We initially got into it to make the art. And do you think that that's an artist thing, is not to pay attention to the details and how you're getting paid and why, and retaining and getting royalties?
Well, creative people, they focus on the work. They're and sometimes that kind of throws them off when they have to think about all the semantics. They just want to do the work. They want to create the art. They want to create the sound. They want to do this. They want to do that. And sometimes they don't even think about, oh, yeah, I could do that. Oh, yeah. And you don't necessarily have to employ a lot of people to do that. I mean, I'm one person, and I did all of that. I pretty much did what a record company would do.
So
and that goes back to the philosophy. You should own your own. So I'm kind of doing this to show you that you can do this yourself and that this can be done. And once you see the process and you have these certificates where you're like, wow, that's my name. It says the Library of Congress. I got a number.
And that's important.
I got a number.
That's important.
And can't nobody take this. They gotta wait 70 years after I'm dead, or it's a lot of things.
It is a lot of stuff that's public record that people don't even know.
Exactly.
I mean, they had to, I think the birthday song or something like that was up for to be bought at some point. So in the age of entrepreneurship, like right now, everybody can, is on YouTube trying to do their thing, and Master P at one point was like engineering, selling their own stuff out of there. What do you think keeps people from doing it themselves? Because people still need you, clearly. So it's not, there are some people that don't need the middleman, there are some people that do. Do you think that at some point what you do will become obsolete because everybody's just going to be forced into this music business ideology, or do you think there will always be artists that just want to do that and would rather hand off those responsibilities to you?
Well, you'll have quite a few people who will want to do it themselves, and some will only want advice as towards how to do it. So it's also about how you present yourself in that marketplace. So you kind of have a consultation with the artist to see exactly how they would need you, and then you let them know how you'll fit in that picture, okay? And if it's just where you're having a conversation with them, which I've done that with some young artists before. Because a lot of times when they see these artists on TV, on these talk shows or videos and that whole thing, nobody is really paying attention to everything that goes into that. What's the backstory behind that? What all got them to the point where they're here? Are they sitting at a late night show broke? Or, I'm just saying, are you sitting here entertaining but you broke? Did you go in the studio for 4 days before you even cut the track? And knowing that the record company has to pay for those 4 days? And then when you get your check, you like, oh, what happened? Yeah, we had to pay for that studio time, remember? When you was jagging off with your friends and shit for 4 days before you decided to lay down a fucking track. So,
Which does happen. It happens a lot.
It happens all the time.
Certain creative,
So, I mean, you have to make them aware of everything. And in saying that, to a certain degree, yes, my job might just phase out. But then there are other people who just will not deal with any of that stuff and will trust you. So I would just say it's like maybe a 70-30, 60-40 situation.
70 in favor of the independent artists, or in favor of the artists who would rather use your services?
Independent artists.
Okay.
Because they want to figure out a way that they don't have to pay everybody. But at the same time, they want to be paid, but they're not thinking about distribution. Distribution is when you probably got to use the record company. Unless you can work out a deal, but you pretty much would have to have sold like millions almost for the record company kind of to be into your favor.
Have you done
in terms of percentages?
Have you dealt with like international people and getting people overseas and stuff like that, or is that something you're aspiring to?
I'm aspiring to that. Yes.
Has that been? Do you have any reasonings as to why that might be a harder market to break into, or has it just not been something you've gotten to yet?
I haven't necessarily gotten to it yet, but I've gotten emails from a couple of people in London, and because of the time difference, I guess we are just not catching each other with this phone call.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I would like to tap more into that. Definitely. Yeah,
the international market is certainly hard to get into. What about the national market? Because that can be a bear too. And actually, in my experiences, the national market is harder than the international market, because at least the international market is willing to give you a shot. The national market is very contingent on who you know, whether or not they've associated you with somebody they do know. It's never just it's never just, I know you and your product is great, or I don't know you and your product is great. But here it's, why do I know you and why should I give you this and what have you done and all of this stuff. And even then your resume doesn't always, carry you.
That goes back to selling. And you can sell anything if you got product knowledge. Product knowledge, you pretty much need 20% of that and bullshit for the 80%. When you go into a store, they're going to tell you some true things about the product. And everything else is like bullshit. So basically, an old adage that is said in retail is, don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle, if you understand that. So you're not going to sell the porterhouse steak. You'll sell the sizzle, how it cooks, what flavor is it going to produce. You have to think of it that way. So if you're selling an artist, you're not going to sell, oh, he's an African American. No, you're going to sell the experience he leaves the audience. Because audience means numbers. Numbers mean money. That means drinks, which they definitely count at these venues. It means drinks, if it's full, all of that counts.
So how do you sell experience to the audience? Because that's the biggest thing is, and that brings me back.
You're selling it to the talent buyer. The talent buyer, number one, you're going to do your research on the venue. So if it's a venue that, say for instance, like Promontory, okay, so we know pretty much if you live in Hyde Park, the type of venue that is.
Right.
So they have drinks on the second level, okay? So they know if they bring in a particular artist, they know what type of people are going to come in. So the talent buyer for Promontory has already been in this business for quite some time. So he knows the type of audience that he can bring in based on the artist that he provides for the venue. So he already knows how many tickets he's gonna sell. He's been doing it a long time.
So how do they give you? So if you're a new artist, then how do you sell that new artist that doesn't have a relationship with that person?
That new artist generally opens up for someone who's the major artist who would probably have the same audience that they have, the same listening audience. So that's how that artist would get on for, say for instance, the headliner. Sometimes you go through the promoter, other times it's with the talent buyer for the venue.
So in terms of contrast, I mean, you don't. I know as an audience member, because I know as artists we aren't often thought of as audience members, but I know as an audience member, I don't necessarily want to hear somebody in the same vein as somebody else the entire night. Is there something to be said for contrast, like having somebody that's different from the main act come on and do, or do you want somebody that's kind of going to lead up to the main act?
Well, pretty much it's up to the talent buyer. It's up to the talent buyer.
So they put together the lineup basically.
Yep.
Okay. So you don't necessarily sell a package deal like, hey, I've got Avery, and then I've got somebody, maybe a new artist you handle that, you know.
You can look at the calendar of events for a venue, because a lot of times these people are booked ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes they don't have openers. So you can be like, oh, okay, well, if you have, say for instance, okay, you have Quincy Jones, or no, a trumpeter, some sort of trumpeter, which Quincy Jones was initially.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and Corey Wilkes is amazing trumpeter, by the way.
Oh, yes, shout out to Corey Wilkes.
Shout out to Corey. But, of course, he can play those compositions, okay? So you would be like, okay, I have Corey Wilkes, he plays this, he plays that. He's done Night in Tunisia by Dizzy Gillespie. And you would just start naming all those things and send them little excerpts of the music via email, or if you're talking to them on the phone, you just tell them everything, and then they'll let you know whether or not they want that kind of information. But that person could definitely open for Quincy Jones. Okay. That would not be a problem.
Did you read Quincy Jones's interviews?
Absolutely, I read it.
What did you think of his devotion?
He was dead on about the music. I'll just say that. Everything else, that was objective.
Explain what you mean by that, because I was
the music. What he talked about with the music, and I can't remember the exact sentence that he said, but I know when I read it, I was like, "You're absolutely right." I think that new artists should try to find their own voice. Don't try to sound like someone else. If you think back, say in the 70s, just if you looked at one of the Grammy shows, so to speak, you had a Diana Ross, you had a Gladys Knight. Did they sound the same? No,
absolutely not.
You had a Shaka Khan, Anita Baker, Patti LaBelle, all of these different women in their own avenues, but they all had hits, but it was all different sounds. They found that was their voice. You know what I mean? They weren't trying to.
You think that's lacking today?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that was one of the quotes that Quincy said, was that these younger guys, he was speaking specifically about T-Pain, but generally about the younger music in general, is that they lack attention to detail.
Exactly.
And, I mean, to be fair to T-Pain, he did kind of, not fire back, but kind of explain himself that, you know, didn't really want to do the track in the first place, and he tried to explain that to Quincy.
Then he shouldn't have did it.
But you know, but there were a bunch of artists that really didn't want to do certain songs and all of that stuff, and they ended up doing it, and it became one of their biggest hits. Like Herbie Hancock talked about, Rocket, and that ended up being like one of the only Grammys that he won was that, which became like the b-boy anthem for early hip hop and rap and stuff like that. And you just never know what's going to hit, and
right.
Sometimes that can be frustrating, especially as artists, because God knows, Gladys Knight, speaking of her, mentioned about, having to sing Midnight Train to Georgia over and over again and making it sound new. It's like, these young kids don't have the attention to detail to be able to do that, because it's like, I've been singing that song, she said something like 50 years or something like that. It's like to be singing the same song for 50 years and not get tired of it and still have that convey the message originally like she sang it back in the 70s.
Absolutely.
It's just something that's kind of lost today, because everybody wants to put out new music. I've got something new, I got something different for you. They always want to evolve instead of cultivating a sound. And so you would agree that that's definitely missing today.
Absolutely.
What do you listen to then? Do you still, because I'm old. I listen to all old shit. I'll listen to new shit only because I have to like learn to play it at different gigs and stuff like that, and wedding bands and all that shit. But generally, I listen to older shit. That's basically my thing. You were saying earlier that you listen to the Migos and stuff like that. So I'm just throwing it out there. So you listen to the Migos. What other new artists interest you?
I listen to Migos. I listen to Avery R. Young. I listen to Kahil El-Zabar, Corey Wilkes, Junius Paul,
all Chicago
Justin
favorites.
Dillon, Megan McNeil.
Shout out to Megan. I got a gig with her in probably about 10 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also listen to Billie Holiday, Miles Davis, Coltrane, Charlie Parker,
So all the older
Oscar Peterson, who I always call you anyway with that piano, the elegance of that piano.
I got a chance to bow to him once at Symphony Center and just tell him thank you.
Justin Dillon is an amazing pianist and organist.
I do my best. But, speaking of Oscar was so humble when I met him. It was when I saw him, and this is after the second stroke, so when I saw him at Symphony Center, he had to pick up his hand and put it down on the piano to make the chord, and he was killing mugs in his right hand. But his left hand was gone. And when I met him, I just said, I would love to bow to you and just say thank you. And he said, you don't have to bow. And he gave me a lot of wisdom, that I'm able to take away. And I've been fortunate enough to study with a lot of Chicago masters and stuff like that. And it's being able to pass it on helps. Do you think that in the future you'll be able to look back and say, I did my part and I was able to pass this on, and your resume is going to be a shining beacon to those who are coming after you?
I would like to think so. I would like to think I have an effect on the people who I have managed and those who I've just talked to in a mentoring capacity. And I think that basically formed, my son was a rapper at one point, and he'll tell you his earliest influences were Miles Davis, Tribe Called Quest, because I used to play that all the time.
Did you listen to the Tribe's new album?
Again, yes. But I would always make my son tell me what the instruments were with Miles Davis, with Kinda Blue, and also something with Cannonball Adderley. It's called One for Daddy-O. And I would always make him tell me, what instruments is that? What is that? What does it sound like? And he learned an appreciation for music that way. And for the artists, and what instruments they played, and why they worked on them and practiced as long as they did. But back to artists that I also love, Anita Baker. I gotta
Who's
give that shout out.
Who I'm very upset about that. She's retiring. She's going on her farewell tour. I'm upset about that. And she still sounds great. She just.
But see, when it's a gift, gifts and callings are what? Without repentance. So if you got that gift, It's, if you notice, all of these women that I named before, they got the gift. They can sing at any time. You don't see them struggling. They don't have to do any dancing all across the floor or whatever. They command respect. Their voice goes out like a spectrum into the crowd.
So missing today. It's so missing.
Right.
All these got to look glamorous and do all this other stuff. And
well, you got to shake your ass when you can't sing. You don't have no delivery. What else you gonna do? So you got to get their attention some kind of way. What you gonna do?
Is there art to ass shaking? That's a viable question because everything else is art. It's got to be an art.
Ice Cube said in clubbing, he said, everybody like a girl that's gonna shake something.
I'm definitely not mad at somebody who's shaking some ass, but if that's the only thing you do, then that's where I think I have the problems.
Right.
If you can't do nothing else and that's all I'm looking at, after a couple minutes I'm gonna be like, okay, that was nice. What else you got?
Well,
there's got to be some substance in there to it. You know? Like, who was that? Millie Jackson didn't really shake no ass, but she definitely had
delivery and stage presence. See, that's missing too.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of these, a lot of singers, they don't have a stage presence. They don't have a delivery or improvisation. Like, for instance, Billie Holiday, she sang the way she felt, and she phrased certain words, certain ways, like with Strange Fruit. It's a hard song to listen to, but when you listen to her, you hear the pain, you hear the anguish in the lyrics when she sings it. So I would say she's successful in her delivery. You felt everything. You felt like you was right there. Okay? You felt like you saw a dead body hanging from a tree, a dead black body.
Yeah.
She said it was strange and bitter fruit. I mean, that was so haunting just to hear her sing that. I was just like, damn. And it was hurtful. I almost felt like crying.
Oh yeah, many people have, and we actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually just watched that Dave Chappelle special, the last Netflix special, where he talked about Emmett Till, and he put that into context with a lot of things. That it was so hip the way he did that. So, but
he gave a history lesson after every one of those.
And he didn't, I was just at A. Rayner, which is where Emmett Till was at his body, and they said you could smell his body for like miles away. Like that's how bad it was. But speaking to Billie Holidays and singers like that, I do a thing with Yao on Sundays called Work on the Sabbath, and he was talking about Nina Simone.
Oh, he's a great singer too. Shout out to Yao.
Yao is amazing. We're gonna definitely have him on at some point too. But he was talking about how at first, how we were saying it was hard to listen to. He was talking about at first when he heard Nina Simone, he didn't like Nina Simone, and then after a while, he had kind of like a aha moment, and then he loved Nina Simone. Did you have that instance with Nina or any artist where it was like after a while the artist kind of either grew on you just had an aha moment as to oh, this is what this artist is, or this is why this connects with me? Do you have any artists that did that for you?
I would say I'm more impressed with technique, so to speak. So if, like I said, all those women that I mentioned had their own technique, their own style of singing. And that always gets me every time. You get my attention when I hear something different, or you phrased it a different way, or you sang it in a different octave, or you rearranged it or something. That always works for me, because that shows me that you're thinking about your craft. You're thinking about how you want the audience to see how you differentiate from other artists, and how you're making your path, how you're making your way.
Do you think that the technique, that's been the running thing now, is like my people are Shirley Caesar and Nesby, my people are Ozzy, but now they have like Kim Burrell and Kiki White and stuff, and technique is starting to be like the thing versus soul. And that's been like the change. Is that something that you gravitate towards, or do you still? Who are your like people that you go to in terms of it?
For gospel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh.
And a lot of gospel artists have spilled into the secular, so you have a lot of that going on too. So when I look at R&B these days, the gospel musicians and gospel artists are the ones that are basically dictating popular music versus back in the day when we were growing up, the jazz musicians were dictating the popular music. So it's definitely changed a little bit now.
But they're allowing the pop artists to do that now.
Mm.
I don't necessarily, I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying it's great, okay? But they're kind of dictating it, and with the radio play, they're doing that. They're definitely doing it by driving that. It's a lot of amazing artists out here who are not even getting the radio play that I much rather listen to. Like, I listen to a lot of old gospel. My mother-in-law, Geraldine Gay, she was part of the Gay Sisters. She was a fantastic pianist. I mean, amazing. Absolutely amazing. She was part of a group called the Gay Sisters. And I think one of their most memorable performances was the bicentennial at the Smithsonian Institute.
Wow.
So she was good friends with Leontine Price, Albertina Walker. They were all good friends. I've even been to Albertina Walker's house with her. And I heard her play, I forget this gospel song. I'm so bad with this right now. His Eyes on the Sparrow. And she played it in a ragtime style and finished it.
His Eyes on the Sparrow in a ragtime.
When I tell you, she was amazing. She played it ragtime style, like Professor Longhair would have played it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I know Professor Longhair.
And then she finished it off very jazzy, and she riffed a lot of the keys. She killed it. I mean, unless you actually, unless you actually knew her and she was just doing this. We were sitting at Albertina's house. Albertina had a piano, so she was just like playing it, just in the way that she wanted to play it. So I wish you would have had an opportunity to meet her. She was amazing. Yeah. She was absolutely.
Anybody that can do ragtime in any capacity is certainly has my vote, because that's something I've always loved, and I play at it, and I know people like Reginald Robinson who are like masters at it. So when I see somebody able to do that and convert it into any capacity, it's always impressive to me, because it's something I can't do, as accomplished, I believe, as I am as a pianist. Ragtime and stride piano is most certainly a lost art. So when people do that,
she was excellent at that stride piano.
It's crazy.
She actually played at the opening of the Pritzker Pavilion. She got 3 standing ovations.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the marks of the true greats. Dr. Lonnie, one of my mentors, did that at the Jazz Fest this past year. It was the second tune, and he played a ballad. And he got a standing ovation for a ballad, which is almost unheard of as for artists, because who can play a ballad these days well enough to get people to get on their feet and reach an emotion down into people to get them to want to stand up and do something like that?
Did he rearrange the ballad?
He
played it a different way?
It was a song that he does called Frame for the Blues that he does all the time. It's one of his most popular songs. But he does it in such a way. He takes his time with it so much. I mean, it's really a throwback, but he makes it so new, and I'm still learning from him how to do that, because when you're able to take your time and put effort into something, it makes you reevaluate the many ways you can get there versus getting there quickly and you only have a monolithic ideology as to how to get there. And the fact that taught me one of the biggest lessons ever is that it doesn't have to be some big, loud, high energy, screaming thing to get people excited and to get an emotional response for them. So when I saw him do that, I mean, we're talking at Millennium Park with like thousands of people, and these people on the second song, like he played a pretty up-tempo number the first note, and it was cool. He got applause, but this ballad, which was about 10 minutes, it might have been longer than that, but he took his time so long with this ballad and put so much soul into it. It was almost like foreplay. It just got everybody to such a fever pitch that by the time he got to the high energy stuff, it was just ridiculous. And he got like 2 standing ovations like that night after the ballad, you know. But it was just like he was setting the tone for what needed to be, and they were hooked from you know the first note to the end note. So what do you have coming up that we can look forward to with any and all artists, or projects that you have for yourself?
Well, the first one that's coming up, it's with Dwayne Powell, who's actually a DJ here in Chicago.
Oh yeah, Dwayne Powell. Yeah.
Yes, and it will be at the Arts Incubator. It's called Rearview Mirror Sessions. The Arts Incubator is located at 301 East Garfield, which is at 55th and Prairie. And Rearview Mirror Sessions is basically, we take older artists, say for instance like Quincy Jones, Donny Hathaway, and we do somewhat of an unsung, where we take you through slides, music, and conversation of their lives. And it's primarily for young people, so they can look back in order to know what the path is going forward. So that's why it's called Rearview Mirror Sessions. So
they get a chance. So who's so Dwayne is the facilitator, and also there's like a panel discussion about the artists.
Dwayne is the facilitator. There, like I said, there are slides. He plays music that sometimes people don't know that there are other studio musicians who are very popular that are part of these arrangements. So you get to see that, and then we also team up a Chicago artist who's influenced by this music, and they perform for the last 30 minutes of the event.
Also, there's live performances.
It's a live performance at the very end.
Oh,
so
wow.
It starts at 6 p.m. and it's over at 9 p.m. So around 8:30, the live performances commence.
Okay, give everybody that information one more time just so they have it.
Okay, so April 12th, it will be Leon Ware that we will feature for the Rearview Mirror Sessions, and it is located at 301 East Garfield, which is 55th and Prairie, in the Arts and Public Life Building, which is the Arts Incubator.
That's a great. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's from 6 to 9 p.m.
Does it happen every month or every week? Or
it's once a month. So the first one is April the 12th.
That's what day is that?
That's going to be on a Thursday.
Is it every Thursday?
It's the second Thursday of each month. So the first one is Leon Ware. The second one is with Patti LaBelle, and the third one is with the great Maurice White of Earth, Wind and Fire.
Shout out to the recent ancestor, Maurice White, Chicago legend.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Maurice was. I don't even know how they continue on. And Verdine is still hanging strong.
Yes.
Junius knows Verdine, so when his brother passed away, it was he had contact with him, and it's hard losing legends. We actually lost Coco Bronson not long ago, and it was of course Willie Pickens and Muhar Richard Abrams. The piano community has taken a lot of hits in these last 6 months. John Wright, and Ward. It's been a lot of people that have cut out. So we're standing on the shoulders and becoming elders a little bit sooner than we anticipated, which is not necessarily a fun thing because we're still learning, but we have these young kids coming up under us so fast. It's like, I don't want to be an elder yet. It's not time, but these kids are coming up and somebody's got to teach them because...
Well, you got to think about it. These people all played very early in life, very early on in life. The music was their life, and they dedicated everything to their craft. They used the right side of their mind, and they definitely used the left side. Because if you come up with these amazing compositions like that, that just doesn't happen just like, oh, I think I'm gonna do this. You know, it's a gift. It's part of your gift that you have. Okay? So you're able to tap into the left side of your brain to get a masterpiece. It's there. It is already there. You just gotta tap into it.
Do you think it's necessary to induce tapping into your brain? Because I was actually having a viable discussion about that with somebody. They were talking about LSD and it expanding your mind and stuff like that. And they're just now, apparently, I don't believe it's just now, but they're just now legally able to start studying the effects it has on the brain. And there are a lot of people that, you know, basically historically, like Charlie Parker and a lot of different artists, you know, Jimi Hendrix, who think that inducing certain drugs kind of helps the creative process.
Kind of like a euphoric.
It brings them into a different headspace, they say, and it allows them to kind of open up, you know, expand their mind, basically.
I think that's going into the left side of the mind because people don't use it that often.
Do you think that's necessary?
I wouldn't say that the drugs are necessary, something like that, because it also has an adverse reaction too.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Is that you know, the means, the ends justifying the means, or because
well, it's like a yin and a yang situation. Okay, if you definitely taking a drug, you're gonna have to take another one to counteract that one at some point.
Mm.
So you gotta think about it like that.
Or let it destroy you.
You roll a dice. If they say snake eyes, you know that's it. You crapped out. You gone.
You gotta get out of the casino. Yeah,
you crapped out.
That was
Snake
one of
eyes,
the
you
things that
crapped
Miles
out.
Davis went through, is that, you know, sometimes you have to do the drug until the end because your body's become so, you know.
Well,
used
with
to
heroin, it's physically dependent. It makes
Yeah.
a space for itself. So if you don't have it, then you will basically have the same symptoms as someone who has like the flu or pneumonia. So
Wow.
I mean, if you want to use a drug that responds, well, I won't say responds, but makes a space for itself, that when you don't give the body that medicine or that drug, that you're gonna be sick. Then so be it. But I mean, you got to be. Well, I won't say that. But.
Well, I think you are a necessary drug that we can all use. I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you
and
for
being
having
here.
me.
Absolutely, it's always fun with Cheryl. If you don't know her, do you have a website or anything that people can get in touch with you?
I'm working on the website now,
Okay.
but if people want to get in touch with me, they definitely can email me at Brain Trust Management, which is brain, the word trust, and mgmt@gmail.com.
Wonderful. We want to thank you all for tuning in. Hope you learned something. Cheryl's definitely dropping a bunch of gems that I'm going to use in my own life. We want to thank you. We'll be here next week.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And you guys be balanced. We'll see
I
you
had a
next
great
time.
time. Bye.